Okay, ladies and viruses, let's go ahead and hurt some feelings today. So, we're going to cover these points first, and then we'll move over here, and then over here. So, it'll kind of work together. But anyways, what's the point of EDC? Well, I call it essential daily carry, and that's all the stuff that you actually need. Like for me, if it's sunny out, then I'm going to need sunglasses, wallet, keys, and, I'm going to need my phone. If it's not necessarily sunny, like it's nighttime, my baseline and my essentials at baseline, like right here, where I'm carrying nothing more than I actually need, and especially like the workout clothes and stuff, is just take away the sunglasses. So wallet, keys, and phone. Now, a lot of influencers and gun tubers will say stuff like, you need to have this, you need to have a tourniquet, you need to have this gear, you need to have that gear. If you don't have this, then you're unprepared. What they're not saying is, you need to have this training, and you need to have this training. And then the gear becomes rational. And I would say, you need to have this training. You need to have this training. If you have this training, then if you can, and it actually makes sense, then carry this item. If you can. Because you always need flexibility. Because I still work around the federal government, and I still go inside plenty of federal buildings, and I've still been, going on plane rides and stuff, and you cannot claim EDC. You cannot claim everyday carry. In the classic sense. That's why I call it essential daily carry. So the essentials is based on your environment, and it's based on three things. The risk that you're willing to take, the threat that you perceive, and the burden you're willing to endure. Alright? So, risk you're willing to take, threat that you perceive based on the area you're going to, and the burden you're willing to endure. Okay? So, this goes back to, doing an actual recon of the area and knowing your town, because a lot of people don't leave their town. They go to work, they come home, and then they do stuff in town. Well, maybe you need to do a reconnaissance of your town, and if you feel like going full bore geared up to go and recon some of these areas, have at it. But you need to establish a baseline. You need to talk to people. You need to actually get your nose into things, and you need to put your ear to the ground. That's kind of what it is to do actual reconnaissance and actually explore it. You can talk to your local police department about the areas, talk to an officer, and just call them up and ask them, or walk in to the station and ask, hey, is this kind of a bad area? Just kind of curious. Are there areas that you'd recommend I stay away from? Blah, blah, blah. They can be very helpful. But next thing is, you need to have an option when you're not allowed to carry any weapon at all. And I would say that is the first thing you need to get, aside from skills training. And this is going to help you because it gives you options. You're not always going to be able to have a pistol or a knife or whatever to help you. So you're going to need to be able to take care of those situations. And not all threats are going to come from pistols, knives, or bats, or whatever, insane little tinfoil hat theory scenario that you're coming up with. You might get somebody who just wants to sucker punch you, or somebody who wants to knock you out because he feels like you looked at him wrong. That happens a lot. People getting in fist fights and stuff and being like, well, if I got into that, I would just shoot him. Why? Well, because they're bigger than I am. Well, the guy that was getting in that fight didn't walk away. He wanted to be the big guy. And that's not going to look good on you. That's not going to look good. You did not make a concerted effort to not be in that situation. So, depending on your state, and my state's one of them, if you are the aggressor and you're interpreted as the aggressor, then, yeah, you're in the wrong. And also, if you're shooting at someone who's unarmed, even if the disparity is relatively high, it can be kind of iffy as for males. For females, not necessarily, especially for pregnant women. So, with that said, you got to know the laws of your area, and that kind of goes into area recon. You need to know the laws and what you could deal with if you did XYZ in a response to XYZ scenario. Alright? That's called using your brain. Now let's go ahead and get into this area, and this is all based on how I do it. I'm just giving you an example of what I do. So when I have nothing extra, so that's what the 0 stands for, nothing extra. It's baseline, it's workout clothes, it's wallet, keys, phone, sunglasses if it's daytime. Number 1, if I'm wearing like jeans or something, then, it's incredibly low threat. I'm just walking down to the gas station. It's going to be wallet, keys, phone, wallet, keys, phone, sunglasses, and a pocket knife, whatever. What I would carry around the house even. So that's just going to be like a flip open knife from Kershaw, not going to be all that goofy, and it's just going to be a straight edge. It's a utility knife, but it can be used as a lethal instrument. So that's just the way I am. Number 2, it would be a baton or a SOC-P. So SOC-P stands for Special Operations Combatives Program. This is just for penetrating wounds. It's not for slashing. It is for quick deployment. I carry an appendix, and this is my lethal option. My second is this baton. Now, the primary reason for this baton is actually not for fighting. It is actually for vehicle extrications. I've actually had to use this to bust through a windshield. Yes, windshield, not a side window. So this will make it through a windshield, no problem. It has a nice little glass breaker on the tip, which has seen, a bit of service, and it's a pretty good tool. Now, if you did need to use it, this would be considered a lethal instrument in my hands, because I would be using it if somebody had a knife or a stick or something like that. If I had to up the force to actually have a weapon of my own, I could use this, and I would use it as a lethal instrument. I wouldn't use it for hitting soft tissue parts like a police officer, because guess what? Number 1, I'm not a police officer, and number 2, I'm not subduing anybody to arrest them. Okay? This is mostly a utility option, because in my area there's a lot of motor vehicle accidents, and being part of the fire department, I could respond at any time, and I like to have this on me. So threat level is going to be going up a little bit, whether that be somebody's going to be in danger, I might have to extricate myself or defend myself. So it's a good multi-purpose thing, and I can pry things open, etc. And I have used it for a lot of different roles, so I like that little instrument. The third is, a pretty significant jump. We're kind of in the middle. It's a likely threat. It's a relatively likely threat, and, I don't want to take too much of a risk, but I also don't want to burden myself too much. So all I'm going to carry is a pistol, no spare mag, and the SOC-P. The SOC-P and the pistol always go together, because this is my lethal retention method. So if the SOC-P is there, it's because if I'm using the SOC-P, is what I'm trying to say, it's because somebody's trying to get a hold of this gun while it's still in the holster, and that does happen. If you print or whatever, somebody tries to go for it, there are empty-handed techniques for retention, but if those fail, it needs to happen quickly. You need to fail quickly, as Pat Mack says, and you need to go to another option. And I've drilled that over and over, the failures, and I've used this drill on people plenty of times, and it's very effective, and I've tried it many different ways, different positions and stuff like that. It's very effective, but you need to have an option of retention, and this goes back to empty-handed training, skills training, etc. It applies and bleeds over into pistols. You can't just throw a gun on you and think that it's good. It's only ever going to happen from bad breath distance. You might have an active shooter or something like that where you have to attack somebody at range. So the pistol that you select is actually pretty important. So we'll get into that in a little bit. So next is I would add a light on there, because it's likely that I'm probably going out relatively far from home. I might have to deal with a vehicle extrication or something like that, so I'm still probably going to carry my baton on me. I'm going to have my pistol and my SOC-P and stuff, but I need to have a light. Reason being, it's probably a date night at nighttime, or if I feel like I'm going to be out for quite a while, or I might be going in areas and exploring. A lot of the areas that we explore are old areas, little history places, so they might have little bunkers or buildings that are relatively dark, or you want to see in something because there's a little bit of a photonic barrier, like you're set back from an old house and you want to see in to the windows, then sure, you got this. This will work. A phone will work okay, but it's really distributed. This is a little bit more focused, so this works pretty good as a utility light. Also at night, something gets dropped, then you can use this inside of a vehicle. It's not going to blind you. It's a pretty good little tool. And I used it quite recently, just going through an estate where somebody had died a couple of years ago, and they were trying to get rid of stuff. So had a lot of old buildings that didn't have electricity because they're like from the mid 19th or mid 20th century, and old sheds and stuff, and there was zero light, zero power, zero AC. So this definitely came in handy, also with the phones. So with that said, why would I carry a spare mag on top of it? Well, that's because I interpret it as being a very high threat. Now, this is like if we're going far away from the vehicle and hiking or something like that, you might actually deal with a situation where you have a number of people, or you might have a number of animals. This was most common in Alaska, actually. So that was my experience with that, but it's usually going to be coupled with this as well. Number 6, the tourniquet, because I believe I'm probably going to get return fire. I'm far away from the vehicle. I'm at an event that's far away from the vehicle among a lot of problematic groups, I guess you could say. Very high risk situation, and we're going to be out there for quite some time. So that's the way I gauge it. I gauge it off the risk that I'm willing to take, and if I'm not really willing to take that much of a risk, then I'm going to carry more. If I feel like there's a low threat, then I'm going to kind of go here, even if I feel like I'm going to take less risk. So I can always kind of meet in the middle and at least carry my pistol and sock P. And everything you add on you is more shit that you might have to employ, and it's basically like wearing a Batman belt, as we call it in security. It's everything that would be on your utility belt, and all of this is now in your pocket, so it's going to be a little awkward to sit down, work around stuff and everything, but, it is what it is. Now, I went over pretty much everything that's on here, so before I get to pistol selection, because that's going to take, like, forever, let me go ahead and talk about the tourniquet that I would carry. Soft T wide. The reason is because I don't have those issues, and don't worry about this. This is just to silence it so it's not clanking around or whatever in my pocket so much, because that just gets annoying. Just hearing it myself, I don't like hearing it. So, anyways, I've used cats, and I wasn't really a fan of them when they're applied for leg wounds, because a lot of times, or actually arm wounds for people that are relatively skinny, or even myself, when you actually crank down, you don't have much Velcro left, and I've actually tightened it so much to where, number one, I've broken actual cats, and yes, they were the current generation, whatever, generation 1 million at this point, and then also I didn't have enough Velcro, so if you were trying to do an arm, and you don't have enough Velcro on you, depending on how muscular you are not going to be able to actually get that tight and get it to hold on. You're going to have to do a lot of snag mitigation, is what I call it. And I don't want to have to incorporate that in my drill, so I have a lot of success with the sock P. This is a little bit harder to crank, but when it holds, it is on there tight, and you don't have to worry about this coming undone. You really have to try to get it undone, and that's one reason why I like this over, the cat. And people with smaller arms, if I have to use this on somebody else, then, again, I can still improvise, but if I have to use it on somebody else, then it's a little more universal. But if you really want to be universal, then you'd want to carry like a rat's tourniquet, but have something else that can actually work on smaller people, right? Some Ethiopian kid or whatever. Now, let's go ahead and go into pistol selection. So I actually have quite a few options for this. Everybody does. Everybody can carry whatever. This is the Shield Plus, obviously. But the reason why I would carry this over something else is because it's really the middle of the road, right? It gives me 10 rounds or more in capacity, and it allows me to where I don't really feel the need to carry a spare mag for most civilian, bad breath distance shoots. I don't really feel the need to carry a spare mag. Now, if I felt the need to plus up my, capacity and go to something that is like the height of a Glock 19, because now it's the height of the Glock 19 right here at 5 inches, then then I can carry that 13-round magazine, which is getting me close to the capacity of a Glock 19 in a very small profile. However, my barrel length is pretty short, so any kind of long-distance shooting I'm doing, I need to couple a hollow point that's actually going to work well with that. And it also needs to perform through barriers depending on what I'm trying to do, right? So there is a lot of thinking and researching and testing that needs to be done before you carry a specific pistol with a specific capacity, carrying a specific hollow point, and being used in specific scenarios, right? So there is more of a fine thought to it. Now, if I feel like I'm going to be around vehicles or in a vehicle for a long time, then I will actually carry a 40 caliber with at least a 4-inch barrel, and that would be the M&P 2.0 compact, the 4-inch barrel version, and that would be in 40 caliber. So I like the 40 caliber because it does really good against barriers, especially with the loads that I use, and I don't have to worry about, you know, the physics of it. It will shoot through windshields and stay true. It's not going to be deviated like the lighter 9mm bullets will. Now, a lot of people are like, well, I would carry this and that gun in the trunk. Well, if it's in the trunk, it's not doing you much good. If it's in the back seat, it's not doing you much good. A lot of people have odd ideas about that, and we're going to get to that in another video, but this is just my little 2 cents here. Most of the time I'm carrying this pistol. I don't really see the need to downgrade to a single stack, but I wouldn't really feel too disarmed if I just had the regular shield again. And I actually, you know, I actually may downgrade to it in the future, maybe, but right now I'm pretty happy with the Shield Plus. It works pretty good, but if this thing ever goes down, it uses the same parts as the Shield, so technically I can just cannibalize my Shield and use the same recoil spring and other slide components, right? So, with all that said, I just wanted to spill in all my little, you know, brain diarrhea about EDC and how it's more based on essentials of the event that you're dealing with, instead of every day I'm going to carry this because you're acting like every day's the same, and it's not. So I'm encouraging flexibility, and I'm encouraging continued training and skills, and then if you feel the need, then have the gear after you get the training, because again, you might find that you actually work better with a specific type of gear that you were trained on. So, with that said, I appreciate you guys watching this video. Go ahead and spread some of this tickle wisdom, or tactical wisdom, with your friends and family. But other than that, I have no opinion.